Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of SchmoeTalks. My name is Aaron Knoll. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again, and we are back. And obviously, we have a lot going on right now. We are still in the midst of our flashback series. When we get those up, talking about the previous seasons of the Schmoedown. We just had our free-for-all review special go up. Check out that if you haven't, because it's probably the most editing work I've ever done on one project, but it was damn well worth it. And now today, I am super excited to be joined by somebody I have known for a very long time. When I first met him, people could legally call me a child. Now I'm just a child in the metaphorical sense. But he is a great man, a longstanding member of the fan leagues, and somebody who does a hell of a lot more than some of you probably realize for the Schmoedown. One Mr. Jeremy Adams. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. How's it going, man?
It's going great. I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, I've known each other a long time, and it's been a while. So I'm excited to be here just chatting with you.
Absolutely. Hosting a show now is a great way for me to just reach out to people I've only spoken through to text for years and been like, hey, let's get back on camera. Now we have a reason.
It does go that way sometimes.
So, it does. So I'm glad to have you here, man. So this is the way that this is going to go. To kind of get us started, we have what I call the 5 questions interview. These are the 5 recurring questions that I ask every guest that comes on the show. And then from there, we'll kind of just get into it and kind of talk about everything your experience in the Schmoedown, both as a fan and, for those who don't know, as a member of the team. And I'll say it off the top. PJ Campbell, the great PJ, talks about the question writing team, which is a select few that are chosen to kind of help with the question writing. And just a couple of weeks ago, they had an incredible event that probably took a lot of work, known as the free-for-all. And I want to say to you, on behalf of your entire team as well, well done.
Thank you.
On our episode, I actually complimented it. It is one of the best written things I've ever seen, and the mix of the questions, I thought it was really well done, man. Kudos to you guys.
We really appreciate that. Absolutely. I can get into more of the nuts and bolts later, but just to hear that response is always great, and the response from the community overall, with a few little little tiny hiccups that were there here and there, but overall the response has been tremendous, and it really means a lot, because that's probably like the most work for one particular event, so we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So obviously, like you said, we can get into that more later, but let's get into these 5 questions.
Right.
And the first one, for a show talking about Schmoedown, I feel like it's a pretty basic question to ask. When did you first discover the Movie Trivia Schmoedown?
Well, I mean, really, I discovered the Schmoes because I was a fan of the Adam Carolla podcast. I used to listen to that when I was at work, like every day. And they actually came on as guests, and God, I don't know when it was, like 2010, 2011. And that's when I discovered their reviews. And then eventually I realized they were doing like their 2-hour show, their live show. So I would watch that on and off and on, and, got to discover, a lot of their crew, like Ken Nepsock doing the news and everything. So that was awesome. And then, in 2014, they just started doing this Schmoedown thing as part of their show. And I just, thankfully at that point was watching it, week to week at that time. And I discovered it that way. And then once, it turned into the actual Schmoedown, like game show format, I followed it all the way through. And, it took a couple years, but, over time I started like connecting with people in the community, but yeah, I was there pretty much from ground zero. I'm one of those guys that can say, 2014 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're before ground zero. You're like underground, the Adam Carolla reference. I talked to a lot of the people I've talked to, whether it's like in a full-on interview or if they've been on one of our panel episodes, I found it around like season 4 and 5 and then went back to watch, but it's all, I mean, I feel old talking about how like I discovered them in 2014, a few months before they started the tournament. And you're like, I know Adam Carolla. It's like Adam Carolla's name barely gets brought up in general anymore, let alone with this. So that's how you're a fan.
I don't listen to him anymore for various reasons, but I'll always be grateful to him for that. But yeah, sometimes I feel like it's a disservice, because it's like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I discovered it a couple years ago and I went back and watched everything, and I'm like, I haven't watched those matches since way back when. So there's a lot of stuff I don't remember as well as a lot of the people do.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. It's the first time I think I watched any of the earlier matches, since before I did this show was when they first aired, and it was when we started doing the flashback series on this show, as a way to kind of integrate some of the community in before I start doing one-on-one interviews with them. We did season 2, and the thing that stuck out to me was I didn't realize it at the time, even though I was a huge fan of the games, but the music they have playing in the background is the score from Halo. Like it's a bunch of its Halo music. For some reason, I didn't remember that, but when I was watching it, I'm listening to the music. I'm like, this sounds familiar. I turned on my Xbox and hit Halo, and I was like, it's the same music.
Yep.
Copyright would never let you do that.
No, and it's interesting to go back and see how much they cussed back then too.
Yeah. I think I said on the episode when we covered season 1 and 2, I said the Schmoedown now is, people, I mean, you could legitimately make an argument. It's a mental sport. It's a real legitimate mental sport. Yeah. Back then it was something they did for an hour to kill time till they went to Chili's. Like that's what it was. It was fun. So we'll get into the second question, which is, at the moment, the Schmoedown is comprised of 3 major components: film knowledge, wrestling storytelling, and now a sports league setup with the factions. Obviously, all of these are major loves and passions for people. Which of these do you love, and when did you kind of fall in love with them?
Well, I mean, I'm a film lover guy, so I would say film knowledge is the thing that I personally take most from the Schmoedown and what brought it to me. I've come over time to appreciate the other elements, like the characters and the factions and all that stuff. But really, it's always going to begin and end for me with the love of movies and the love of trivia. And I'm, I don't always give away how old I am, but I'm a guy who's been around since the 80s. And I think maybe 89, 90 is when I got my first physical Leonard Maltin movie guide. And this, for the young guys who don't know what that is, it was basically like a guide that would have the titles of all the major movie releases that had come out, and it had the release dates, the running times, the main cast, what they were rated, like their MPAA rating and all that stuff. And I just started soaking that stuff in, when I was like 10, 11 years old. And it got to a point where I would read the calendar section in the Sunday paper every Sunday, and that would also tell you all the movies that are coming out, who was in them, all the information. And then eventually over the years it turned to watching whatever game shows I could find on TV that had like movie questions, and then eventually we get to the YouTube era and there's a plethora of stuff. But that's always been what drew me, and nothing has hit it the way that the Schmoedown does in terms of great movie trivia and finding a way to format it in a way that's just compelling to watch and fun, and obviously expand a lot of fans to do their own versions of it. So that's really what it is for me. And being a kid in the 80s when VHS was starting and just being taken to certain of the big 80s movies as a kid is really where I think my love of movies and just wanting to know more. I just, for whatever reason, always had a brain where I always wanted to know, who are these people, these actors, who made this thing. It's like I've always wanted to peek behind the curtain to, know more about the movies, know the nuts and bolts. So that's really, it starts pretty early for me, and that's really what the love is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm very much the same way. Just the love of film and watching film, it's always been there. It's, as you get older and you really start to realize, oh, there is so much to this that makes what you see on screen work. The interest is there. So in that great piece, you kind of answered the third question as well, which is, which of those elements is your favorite? I have to assume it's the film knowledge.
It is the, just the trivia itself. But like I said, I've come to appreciate stuff. I really like certain things, like the sports element of it is definitely my second favorite, because what they've done with factions and teams, I think that's really awesome. And I think it's movie trivia is more fun when you get more people involved, when you can do teams and you can have like a faction of different players and they're up in their group. Like we were kind of doing that in the fan leagues, like even before the Schmoedown was fully doing it, where we had our little factions and stuff. So I love that part of it as well. And it's like, when it comes to the film knowledge, for me, it's not just about loving movies. It's about being able to show off like how much you know to other people. So I think that maybe not very admirable characteristic is a big part of it for me. Like I've always wanted to be like, I know this and I know that. And, watching the Schmoedown was always like, oh, I know, I would have known that question that guy missed, or I know this. And obviously that's what led us, to start our community was, oh, we know what these guys know and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I think there's that competitive, like show offy, part of it, as well as just loving movies themselves.
Yeah, certainly. So then I have to ask, since I think you're actually, I may be misremembering, but you might be the first person that's ever like full on said it's the film knowledge. So one of the things that people talked about, especially since we've gone into the digital age of the Schmoedown, is obviously trying to do things through a computer. As I think a lot of people learned very early on in the fan leagues, was it's very difficult to try and replicate a lot of the other aspects through a computer. But if you study your ass off and just know things and work, that knowledge can really shine through. Has it appealed to you even further the more and more you've seen, now that it's teams of people diving in and studying and really taking the knowledge aspect of it seriously and elevating each other?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I still, as the Schmoedown goes, I still prefer, I would prefer it be live, and especially like when they did live events and stuff like that. I think that it's really special, and I think that complements the trivia as well, because you've got all this energy of whether it's a live show with an audience, you've got the energy of people watching these questions be answered. I think that adds to the trivia part of it. But I think the digital age has really done some great things. It's brought in people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to be involved, and I do think, I'm not entirely unbiased, but I think that the composing of the questions, the coming up with new categories and just kind of evolving the game I think it's the best that it's been. I think that there's been some ups and downs. Like before my time, I think maybe they were just kind of throwing whatever questions in there, and the matches could veer a little too difficult sometimes, and you'd have some like really low scoring matches. And then I think there was kind of a learning curve where they were going way easier with it, and maybe certain matches might have been veering a little too easy. But I think now with the team that we have and with the leadership from Christian and Grace and all the people involved, that it's really hit its stride in terms of the questions being at the right level, to challenge players, but to really have such a great mix of categories, and every division has been upped, like with the new categories that were added to IG and everything. I really think it's kind of hit its zenith, and I think maybe us being able to kind of take a step back and just do it all remotely has helped, being able to just refine the game itself and not have to put a lot of energy into these live events and studio spaces and line producers and all the stuff that goes into that. Maybe it's been a good time to refine the game, so that when we do get back to full strength with live events and everything, I think it'll really be at its apex then. So that's kind of the way that I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I think it's great that they kind of, obviously with the unfortunateness of what's happening in the world, take positives from the negative. It's given them time to really, there's a lot we can't do, so let's really refine what we can. And that is the game aspect of it, which I agree with you 100%. So then let's do it. You're kind of one of the mid-ground people. I have two sets of these last two questions for Schmoedown competitors and then fan league players. You're kind of in the middle somewhere right now, so I'll go with the fan league one since you have actually played there. So my fourth question to you is, if you had your pick, what's your perfect division? Who's your opponent, manager, and if it's teams, who's your teammate? And you can pick from anyone you like, even if you want to bring a fan leaguer up with you.
Oh, okay.
Anywhere you like.
Well, I did, you have hinted, I played in the fan leagues for a long time. I actually retired for a while, and I'm coming back to it now. So I'm actually getting back into playing in the fan leagues. So I mean, my whole thing in the fan leagues was I was always like a face, like that's just natural for me. And at a certain point, I tried to go heel, and it didn't work out very well. Actually, it was like a really bad situation for me. So I definitely would gravitate to the to the face factions, and that if if I were to enter the Schmoedown, I'd really want to just be able to focus on playing the best that I can, and I think being able to kind of slide into a face faction, which is more natural for me, would be good. So my number one choice, I think, would be the Quirky Mercs. I would say a second choice might be the Usual Suspects. I think that those are probably the two factions I feel like I would fit in. I mean, you never know. They could, grab me into corruption, and that could be awesome too, because I love those guys and I have friends in corruption. So, but I would say just off the top, I would think Quirky Mercs might be the best fit for me. In terms of a teammate, I mean, it's weird because you have these great teams. It's like, am I going to steal like Bibiani off of a team or something like that? I don't know, but
it's a very corruption thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to. It's like, are we just fully hypothetical here? Like everyone, all of a sudden, all the teams have been disbanded and we're starting over, or?
But your dreams come true and no feelings get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think we'd probably be a little overpowered, but then again, you'd have overpowered teams. But William Bibiani is my favorite critic. Like him and Alonso Duralde are my two favorite movie critics, and I respect the both of them as people more than anything, in terms above anything else. So I think Bibiani, that would be a dream to be able to play alongside him, and so I would say Alonso might be my number two, maybe a little more realistic. He's not on the Mercs now, but but I would slide him over, bring Alonso over, me and Alonso on the playing on the Mercs, or the ultimate me and Bibiani, and you had Dan and Roca playing together and they didn't win every match. So I mean, I feel like, because I was a champion in the fan leagues, and Bibbs is obviously one of the best players. Would that be a tough team for people? But I think it would be fair. So, and then what was the other part of the question? Yeah, I think
who would you want to play?
Oh, against singles, one-on-one. Because I only got a chance to play against the guy once in the fan leagues, and it was in a free-for-all. And I was kind of going out. I was like just when I was retiring, just when he was heating up in the fan leagues, and we never really got to play each other. And now, obviously, he's the big name, one of the big names. But I got to say, Adam Collins. It's got to be Adam, because if I had just hung in the fan leagues a little longer, he and I probably would have had our time. But if I were to actually, get the opportunity to go in the Schmoedown, and, obviously he's at the top, one of the top, players now. I just think that would be really fun, and it would be good for him, because I knocked him out in one round in a free-for-all, and I'm sure that doesn't sit well with him. So it would be one of the people from the family he could get some revenge on. So that would be awesome.
Hey, if you want to call it twice, it was one of your questions that got him swept along with the other champs. So,
oh yeah, in the multiplex free-for-all, or in the Schmoedown?
No, in the real free-for-all. In the real free-for-all.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because
you're talking about the Bumblebee. Yeah, I don't know how you knew, but I think that was one of mine.
Oh well, that was a
you were just guessing. Oh, okay.
I have no insider knowledge.
We can get into it later. It's a little hard to know sometimes because questions will be in files for years. But PJ might come and tell me I'm a liar, but I feel like that might have been one of mine. I feel like I wrote that for the free-for-all doc previously in a previous year. True, where it actually got canceled. Because I remember I got to see that movie in the theater, and I think that plot deal was fresh in my mind back then, and I might have put that in the doc at that time, and it just kind of been there. So I'm not entirely sure, but if that is the case, PJ might have another opinion. It's sometimes we're not entirely sure where some of the questions come from, but if it's the case, it gives him another reason to want revenge on me. So for sure. But yeah, I mean, obviously playing Dan and Bateman and on the Roke and all the greats would be a dream for any player. But there's just because of a little bit of fan league history, I have to say Adam, because I played Chance and Paul and some of the other people in the fan league. So it's like I've already had I've already, faced off against some of these guys, but Adam and I kind of went past each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to say, to go back to your teams thing, like thinking about it, obviously, I mean, two great players together is always a great shot at a
Yeah.
championship. So you and Bibbs make sense. But the one thing I think Duralde's been missing his entire Schmoedown career, because obviously I think What the Flick, right? His show, his partner on that show is his first teammate. And then with Actually, the one thing he's missed is somebody who really understands the game. He's got just the raw knowledge, but the game's been part of it.
I actually think
you'd be good.
I think it's, there's the gamemanship part of it, but I also think it's attitude and focus. I think we've had a lot of these players. They're great guys. They're great players. They have the great knowledge, but I feel like they come into it with kind of a relaxed attitude where it's just like, oh, I'm just going to play and have fun. And one thing that I am not is relaxed. Like I have a lot of stress energy. So when I'm playing, I'm like, oh my God, I got to focus. I got to win. We got to do this. And I feel like maybe that would be a little kick in the butt that Alonso could use from a partner that he hasn't had yet. a little different energy to kind of make, get out of that kind of relaxed and kind of let's focus. Let's do this sort of energy.
Because I was going to say, I love Matt Actually to death. He seems like an incredibly nice guy, but challenging your own win is the opposite of that energy. So that's honesty, not winning.
If Alonso was a little more like me, he would have been like, Matt, what are you doing? And he would have talked him out of it. I would have never, if I was Matt's partner, I would have never let. So with me and Alonso, but we'll be more, focused. Like, sometimes there's moments like that. Like I've actually played in some fan league matches where I'm like, the other player, my opponent, will answer and they'll say, oh, that's wrong or whatever. And I'm like, I think they could challenge that actually, but you don't say it. It's like, that's not your responsibility. You have to be a little bit of, you got to be a little diabolical and you got to play to win. And it's like, there are going to be times when you're like, oh, I feel a little bad about that. But it's like, hey, they answered, they said it was wrong, they didn't challenge, their manager didn't challenge, and it's like, it's not my responsibility to do that. So I just got to play my game. So I would definitely keep Alonso on track when it comes to stuff like that.
100%. So the last question can kind of just casually let us slide into conversation, which is, what has your experience in the fan league been like? And then if you want to answer the second part about would you ever move up if you got the chance, you can. But that very easily slides into the next part, because to say you were a founding member of Full Metal Media, would that be correct?
Yes. Yeah, Full Metal. We started the channel, and I was one of, I think there was 6 of us, which included Chance Ellison, Sandy Robinson, Alex Ward, and some other people. So yeah, I was one of the founders of that channel, and we kind of like over time teamed up with some other channels, and there was some like different changes that happened and expansions. Yeah, we teamed up with you guys for a while. Yeah. You were part of our group. Yeah. Yeah, the Movie Battleground.
A lot of fun, a lot of great guys.
But yeah, we were the ones that kind of started that whole thing off. We had been part of a different league. It was called the Movie Fan Reaction League, which was a whole other thing. And a bunch of us were like admins from that group, and then we're like, hey, let's do our own thing and do all like, original just our own trivia and write our own questions and start our own league. So I was one of the originals from there.
Yeah, and I mean now, and as somebody, I'm not going to take any credit and say I run a fan league, but at least as an on-camera personality, I aid the fan league that's attached to this channel, TMG Trivia. I think it is fair to say that, Full Metal has achieved the status of not only just one of the longest, but kind of the premier fan league. That's kind of the first one that gets brought up. It's the one that Chance, Paul, Robert Parker, Kevin, damn, Smets. Why do I forget his name? Kevin Smets. Adam Collins, I'm probably sure, played there. Jen Kemp, who's now in the Schmoedown. Yeah. So a lot of the players, a lot of those players have come from kind of that league. And so to have a piece in starting that. So what would you say your experience has been like overall? You can kind of touch on whatever you like. Wherever you want to go, that's where we'll go.
In the fan leagues, well, I mean, like I said, we were all just people that love the Schmoedown, and we just like were in the Facebook group, and then I saw there was this fan reaction league thing that got started, and I started getting involved with that channel, and became an admin, and I just met some people that were my friends, and we were like, well, there were a couple other fan leagues that were kind of starting up at that time, and we're like, well, we can do something a little different. So I think we were like the first channel that really did the multiplayer format where you have, 5+, 7, 8, players playing all at once. And that was kind of, and doing it all live, that was kind of, what we thought our contribution would be, was to come up with that format. And I remember like me and Chance and Sandy and a couple other people devised the whole format. And Chance actually had a lot of, like he came up with a lot of it. Like his contribution to that format and to really the starting of the whole channel can never be diminished, because he had so much. And I was really more just the guy who's, all right, well, I'm going to come up with the categories and write the questions. A lot of the questions, that was kind of where my focus was, just getting this up and running. But in terms of like being the idea person, Chance was really a big part of it. And just over time, we met more people and made more connections, and eventually got into doing, singles and teams formats. And, we got to connect with people like RJ, Rene Villarreal Jr. was an original admin, but he kind of teamed up with Robert Parker at a certain point to start the Geek division. And then, at a certain point, it's like things are running and things are going great. So you're like, well, what else can we do? And at a certain point, I just came up with this idea of let's do like everything's so just locked down into movie trivia. Let's expand it. And I came up with this idea of Full Metal Random, which was just people can just throw out, make challenges and whatever they want, and start doing all kinds of different trivia. And I was the original host, and I kind of got that show on its feet. And that's something that'll always, in terms of being behind the scenes in the fan leagues, is something I'll always be proud of, that I kind of launched that show. And I think there have been some other leagues that have done similar shows since then. So that one was definitely something I'm really proud of. But just being able to have been a writer on a lot of great, matches for a lot of great competitors like Paul Oyama and Chance Ellison and Jen Kemp that you mentioned, and a lot of other great players that have gone on, whether it's into the Schmoedown or even people who just really become fan league stars like Caleb Boatman and Brian Michaels and Kurt Kolakowski, who's part of the Full Metal team now. It's just been, it's amazing that I could have been there at that time to kind of, help launch all of that. But it was always the reason that I started writing questions in the first place was so I could play. Like it was always like, we want to play and we don't really have a good place to play. So we kind of created it sort of for ourselves too, where, okay, we're going to be writing matches and everything, but we're also going to be playing. And so having been a competitor who, was there at the beginning, and I think I had the benefit of being able to really get better from the beginning. Like from early on, I when I started out, like everybody does, I made a lot of rookie mistakes, and there was a lot of genres and things that I kind of had to refresh on. And I think by the time, we started off in like 2017, by the time you get to like 2019, which was like my prime year as a player, I really, had kind of hit my stride. And that was an amazing thing to be able to say that, I was a singles champion in 2 different leagues, 2 great leagues. Like, I'll never be able to downplay how great the multiplex league is. Like, as much as, Full Metal's close to my heart, they're right up there as one of the great fan leagues that I think will ever be. And having been able to be a champion over there will always be, something that meant a lot to me. And even was a team's champion at one point there. So having been able to really refine my game and get to that point, and even some of the losses, like playing a 5-round match with Paul Oyama and going down to the last question and having him beat me at the very end in a Full Metal title match was, not very fun at the time. But looking back, it's like, man, it was incredible. And if I were ever, to get to the Schmoedown, like I've seen. Obviously Paul's a legend in the Schmoedown now too, but I've seen some of his matches where he's like, he didn't show those kind of weaknesses when I was playing him. Like, man, if only I could have caught him having a bad game. He never had a bad game when I was playing him. It was like, oh man, I missed that.
So he knew he was going up against you. He's like, I got to do this.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, we'll get into it, but the behind the scenes thing is in 2019, I was officially asked to come to the Schmoedown as a writer. So at that point is where I had to kind of step down in terms of writing questions and running matches in the fan leagues. So that was like the transition out. But that was at the same time I kept playing in the fan league. So, that's when I was really, my apex as being a player. But at a certain point, I just think, with some anxiety issues and things that I have, I needed to, step away from playing for a while and just really focus on, my Schmoedown writing and different things. Right. And I've just now recently come to a place where I'm like, I think I want to get back to trying to play again, just for the fun of it. And not, I mean, I've already kind of proved I held those titles, and I played, some great competitors that are still in the game. And, my Brian Michaels is currently the Full Metal singles champion. And, I had beaten him in the past. So it's like, I don't really feel like I have much to prove. I'd love to come back and hold titles again, but it's more like, I had to kind of step away for a while and kind of recenter myself. And I think every player goes through that sometimes. We've seen Schmoedown players go through that. So that's kind of like the arc of my fan career, I guess I would say.
Yeah, and I can certainly relate to that in a certain sense. It is nice to kind of hear more about the fan leagues, because I've talked about it, and I've almost really thought about it since I've come back and started helping with TMG again. It's kind of weird, because like when I say to people, like people I talk to who are on the show, I'm like, oh yeah, like I know Chance, I know Paul, I know Rob. I used to work with Robert. He was a part of TMG. Like I know these guys, and they're like, how long have you been playing trivia? And it's like, I never thought about it. And I was like, I was completely adjacent to you guys that entire time. But I honestly
you were always part of it. Yeah.
I don't actually, like, I honestly can't tell you if I ever played in TMG. I really don't know. Like, I know I played at least one classic match. Mm-hmm. No, two. Because I remember doing okay in one. And then I remember another one. And all I remember was the round 2 category was the option where it spun the number where it's like a surprise category that's not there.
Oh, yeah, the secret category, yeah.
Yes, and it was anime films. And I just remember being me and the 5 panelists collectively going, fuck, what is this going to be?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know that
it was in 2019.
Yeah, I think that was when Cameron Holzman was a writer with us, and I think those were his questions. I might have thrown one in there, but if I recall, I think that's what those questions were. But yeah, by the way, secret category, that was Chance Ellison's invention. I'm always giving him credit.
Give him another credit.
This is the thing with Chance, this kid. He'll do these brilliant things, and he'll just toss it off like it's nothing. Like, oh yeah, so here are the categories, and there'll be a secret category that can be whatever. And I think he wrote the first match as a spec match, and he just had that in there, and that was part of it. I'm like, oh yeah, that works, and then we just kind of all rolled with it. It wasn't like, oh my god, he just created this thing out of no, I didn't even know how he came up with the idea or where it came from. It was that, and that has been a huge part of Classic from the very beginning.
It is, yeah.
Oh no, don't pick the secret category. It adds so much drama and humor to each match. So yeah.
Yeah,
but
especially the wild.
I don't know what iteration it was. It might have been one of the pre-leagues. We had Worldwide Movie Trivia, and then we had
I definitely remember that.
There will be trivia before that. I think you're on a team or so. I remember you playing teams matches and stuff. Or something like that. I definitely played There Will Be Trivia with Henry, and I know for a fact I played when there was just the fan Movie Trivia Schmoedown. I definitely played that. Yeah. But once it became Full Metal, and especially because we were with you guys for the longest time, I just kind of thought back about how it was, and maybe that's just how ingrained I was in doing our own thing. It was just I'm kind of shocked that I never pushed to actually play. Yeah, Movie Battleground was really in high gear then, so I'm sure you were busy.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing. I've never really talked about it because I don't know if I've ever really had anyone on that played a whole ton of it, but we certainly have with you. For anyone who's somehow been subscribed to this channel for that long and is still watching videos, it's currently not a thing anymore. I've debated the idea of bringing it back, but I don't know how much I hate myself. But Movie Battleground was the thing we kind of founded this channel on, and it was it was movie fights. And we did that for a few months, and then it was essentially ripping off movie fights. But when we really kicked it into gear was, when the unfortunateness happened with Screen Junkies and Andy Signore's firing, and that show went off the air for a bit. And that was, a moment where we all looked at each other and went, I hope and obviously in the years since, we've learned more about that case, but it's like, look, whatever happened, I hope anyone who was hurt is okay. This is our chance. This is our chance. And it's like,
I remember your like co-league runner was Matt Beer, and I remember him putting up a message the day that we heard the news that, everything that had gone down initially. I remember him putting up a mess. I remember watching it when I was at work, and obviously you guys were tuned into that. And then, I just remember you guys really being like, well, this is our moment to fill this void and really, up the content, up the competitor. Like, you had some incredible competitors. Like, I mean, some of the guys that I debated against, when Movie Battleground was in its heyday, would rival any of the actual movie fights people, in my opinion. Like, there was a really golden period there when that show was really firing.
Yeah, it was. And like, in terms of, needing a second, like I stepped away from it in March of 2019. And I remember, like, I posted a video to Facebook saying like, I'm stepping away. And like, a couple people who had been in it for a long time were like, oh shit, that was out of nowhere. And I've said since, it wasn't out of nowhere. I told Matt at the start of the year, hey, this is what I'm going to do, because at that point, and I at the time I worked at one of the busiest movie theaters in the country, and I just got promoted to management. So I'm like, between school and this, it's like I just don't have the time. And so that's when we started adding team members to the group. And I was going to say, I don't know if any of this has stood out to you, but one of the things that I stepped away, but I never really lost sight. And even to this day, like, I don't really play in anything in Full Metal. I don't put myself out there as often. Maybe I should, I don't know. But I'm still on the page. I'm still watching. I've seen the growth and the consistency and the interest in all the people. And I always felt that for Battleground, and like Beer and Subrath, and Parker was still with them at the time, and the people who kind of came in after I left. And what they did, and they had, unfortunately, it didn't last as long as I think they wanted it to, but there was just this period where they were able to expand it. Yeah. And I've talked about this on other shows. And I remember saying straight up, like, me leaving for a period was the best thing that happened to the show, because as the person who kind of became the de facto head, there were ideas that I was pitched that I couldn't conceive. Like, to me, multiple judges was a scheduling nightmare. And like, the idea of running more than one type of debate league was just, that's a lot. And by me stepping out, and instead of Beer kind of taking that de facto head, he really made it as everybody gets a piece of the pie. Let's not do this again. It helped it grow in the best way possible. And I believe they were still with you guys, right? At the time when I stepped away, they were still with you,
I think they were for a while at that point. Yeah. But, I relate to that, because I've seen, since I haven't been able to be in a major leadership role in the fan leagues, I've seen, like, in Full Metal, some really creative, amazing people come in and add new things to it. I think Jay Burns is a much better classic host than I could ever be. That guy's so sharp, and the way that he runs that has always been amazing to me. And I relate to that for sure. You see. And, I definitely was kind of running some things pretty tightly, like random and classic. Like, I had a tight rein on things, and like, oh, it's got to be this way. Our round 3 format in singles has to be a certain way. And then once I was gone and seeing other people, come in and bring new ideas, it's like, oh man, I didn't, that idea hadn't occurred to me. That's brilliant, to do it that way, or to change the format, of the round 3 or whatever to be this certain way, or incorporate this sort of idea. That always happens. And, you can get, sometimes you do need that be able to step away a little bit, because you can get so focused, like, because you've been doing it and it's been working, and you're just locked in, and it's like, it's got to be this way. And you're trying to collaborate with people, but I think you do get that tunnel vision sometimes.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I have to, since I mentioned it, you talked about the great people debated. I have to compliment you, man. You were always one of the
Yeah.
people that impressed me the most, man. Because I mean, even on this show, you're so articulate with the way you
Hmm.
speak. You're so good at getting your points out and the elaboration. And I was always very impressed with yourself. And since we're not heaping enough praise on him, Chance Ellison as well was another one who
He was
was
great. Yeah.
incredible. Like
Yeah.
I found an old document that was updated after I left, but I was still attached to it. I just never paid attention. And I think by the time he stopped playing, his record was like 6-6, and I'm like, that's just fucking unfair because he was better than that. Like,
Yeah. I remember one time he felt that he kind of got screwed because there was like a connection issue at the end of a match when they're in the, because you guys did like a speed round at the end, and he was like,
yeah.
man, I got screwed by the connection, because he always had bad internet. That was like the joke with Chance. We'd always joke with him that Chance needs new internet. And
Yeah.
but yeah, he was great. And yeah, it was so much fun. Like yeah, I went on a run there where I was running, from match to match, and it was a really fun period. And yeah, I definitely look back fondly on, and yeah, there were some times where I was like, oh man, this is such an uphill battle. Like, this guy that I'm got to debate against is such a opinionated person and such a big personality, but I would just try to find my own way to come at it. Like, I would kind of go around the argument a little bit and like find other ways to kind of get to the point that I was making, and trying to like kind of get in the opponent's head a little bit. And it was a whole other skill that it definitely was fun for me. And I appreciated that, that opportunity. And again, a lot of stuff's just timing. Like, I just happened to be there at that time, just like
Yeah.
I happened to be there when all these fan leagues were taking the gear, and it's, that's how it goes sometimes. I got to be because I was like the first known fan league question writer, I got the call to the Schmoedown. It was like,
Yeah.
it's
Right
crazy
place,
how
right time.
those things just happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to ask you, and obviously, you can speak about whatever you can. I know there are
Yeah.
some things that they kind of keep on lock, but so I remember, and this was even before Chance got put in, there was this discussion, and I remember being kind of passed a list just for thought of, hey, they're looking at potentially wanting fan league players to participate, and these are the names on it. And rightfully so, your name was a part of that list. So I just have to ask, was there ever discussion about you being a player, or was it always just then they approached you with the question writing and that was it?
I never had a discussion with Christian specifically about being a player. I have to think that he knew that the people there knew that I was, a well-known player. But I think
Mm-hmm.
because I had been, publicly known as a question writer, I think that, and actually, I was actually at I went to one of the Schmoedown events, one of the live events in LA, and we all
Yes,
went
yeah.
to like the bar across the street after, and we're hanging out. And I had a discussion with Chance. This was when Chance had just started. I think he had just played his first match.
Yes.
And they were still considering, Chance was like the first fan league player in, and they were thinking about, who are they going to reach out to and everything. And I was there with him and Chris Skaliski, the head writer at the time. And Chance was like,
Yeah.
Jeremy wants to be our Schmoedown writer, right? And Skaliski was like, well, he does. I'm like, he's like, you do, right? I'm like, yeah, I'd like that. So I think basically what happened was my name got on the list because they were looking for writers. And Skaliski probably had a conversation with Christian at some point, and they were probably like, yeah, we need writers. And, this guy's written, hundreds of matches in the fan league. So, we should get
Yeah.
this guy. So yeah, I think maybe my name was on a player list at some point, but it kind of got nipped in the bud pretty quick because, they really needed writers at that point.
Yeah.
I do remember, hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but I remember having a conversation. I got into a group chat with Christian and a few of the players, and this was years ago, but I can tell you, like 2018, or no, 2019, like early 2019, Jacob London was already on his radar, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Jacob London, he played his match in Full Metal, right? Did he win?" And they're like, "No, he didn't win." And like, "Oh, who beat it? Did Chance beat him?" I'm like, I beat him. And he's like, and then he didn't say anything. Like, instead of going like, oh, you're that good of a player, Jeremy. I think he was like, oh, whatever, because he had me in mind to be a writer. So it was like
Right.
the conversation didn't continue into, that. It was just like, oh crap, Jeremy beat him. Oh well, we still know Jacob's great and we want him to play.
Yeah, and I don't think you're getting any trouble because they said in his match. I'm pretty sure they said years in the making. So
Yeah,
and he made it anyway. So who
he's
cares?
had his eye on Jacob for a long time, and of course he should. I mean, Jacob
Jacob's great.
is a legendary player and a really important person in the community because he was part of the leagues that were before even us. So and he's a great player, and he's one of those guys with that I had the honor to be able to play and actually defeat. So he's on that list for being able to. Actually, my first official singles match ever was against Jacob. I'd only played in these multiplayer type matches before that. So that was a big moment for me was playing Jacob back in I think that was still that might have been 2018 at that point. So
yeah, no, I mean that is a credit to you to be like, look at all these players that go into the Schmoedown. You can just be like, I beat them. I beat them. Just keep adding up the list. The more they bring in, the higher.
I could never quite beat Chance or Paul, but I got close a couple times.
Well, they've more than proven that even some of the better players in the Schmoedown can't get past them. So it's that's a fair one. So yeah, let's get into it a little bit more. Obviously, you are one of the question writers for the Schmoedown. What's that experience been like working with? Because again, it's a bit of a culture shift going from Skaliski doing it by himself for so long to all of a sudden now there's a team in place. So what was that like for you getting started, and how's it been?
It's been it's been an amazing thing. It was very, very different from what I was used to because it was just basically hey, we need riders. You want to join the team? I'm like, yes. And then because Skaliski basically added me into their docs. And it was just basically like, okay, yeah, we need questions and such docs and certain categories. And, they've always been awesome. There's never been like, okay, you have a quota, you've got to write so many, or you have to write, it's always been like, yeah, we just need questions. And I've been there and I love doing it. And, as soon as I was seeing my questions go into matches with these players that I idolize, like John Roca and Dan Merle, as soon as I saw that, it's been just an amazing thing. And, I think it's the single, greatest thing, even though it's kind of weird because I just am here, living on my own, writing questions and documents. And then all of a sudden, they go into matches. But to be watching these matches as a fan and see these players answering my questions, occasionally getting stumped on my questions, it's probably been the greatest thrill, even, over being a player in the fan leagues, which I didn't think was possible because, winning a title, even if it's in, a match with your friends, is a hell of a joy. But to see John Roca, have to answer a question or even I remember once there was a match where I think Ellis and Ken Knapsack were hosting, and they asked a question from the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where it was, what band do you see playing on the Warner lot at the end of the movie? What rock band? And Ken Knapsack's like, that is the greatest question that's ever been asked in the Schmoedown. And I'm like, yes, yes! I got Ken. And it's like,
that's it. I won. I'm in.
So yeah, it's not as, I would say it's not, well, it's different now. The first year or so, I would say it wasn't as social. It was just occasionally you get a message. Occasionally there'd be a Skype call, just kind of catch up on things. But it was really just kind of, I'm just writing questions, and they to do with them what they will. And I would say once there was some changes being made and Chris Skaliski kind of stepped back a little bit, PJ was brought into the team, and then it was pretty clear pretty quickly that he was going to be stepping up and taking the leadership role. I think it kind of changed. It became a little more, we really kind of, I would say really what happened was I guess it would have been 2020 last year, is when they had this ambitious push to do a lot of exhibition matches. And it was like, because they were trying to feel out the digital age, we're going to kind of cut our teeth on the exhibition matches. So it was like all of a sudden we needed a lot of unique questions very fast. So PJ had kind of assembled his team at that point. And there was a certain, number of us. And now it's like, well, this isn't just, oh yeah, we need to fill up those singles docs, or we need to, we need some new IG questions. This was a whole other, well, who knows Back to the Future? Who knows James Bond? Who knows romantic comedies? Like we got to get all hands on deck, and we had to really communicate like almost on a daily basis to get these things done. And it really kind of bonded. And now it's like I work with people kind of almost more in the family days where I work with people I consider my friends. Like, PJ, having him in my life, whether or not, he's my boss or I work for him or I work with whatever, it's just being able to, occasionally, be on a call with that guy and crack some jokes and just have fun and connect on it. Because we'll get on calls and we'll be writing questions for matches and they'll be like, oh yeah, let's do a question from that movie. And I'm like, oh, I love that movie. It's like, I love that movie. And PJ's such a, he's just such an exuberant guy. He just like, he gets you excited. He's just got so much excitement and energy. And, the few times I've been able to, work on a match with Abby and or the writer Jose, it's been really a really awesome, since they kind of figured out how to do the Schmoedown in the remote era. It's been awesome to be a part of that team then. And but yeah, it went from being just very kind of almost like isolated, like I'm just somebody who's like I almost felt like a contributor more than like a team member. And it's been awesome to kind of to be there as it's changed over time. And but the thrill has always been the same, like a little behind the scenes, we had written a free-for-all for 2020. Like it was like, that was like one of the last things that, Chris Galiski really spearheaded. And I'm like, yay, I get to write because I actually got hired to the Schmoedown in 2019, about 2 weeks after the free-for-all. So I'm like, dang, I just missed the 2019 free-for-all. So I was so excited to, be one of the writers for a free-for-all, and then to have it not happen was, I mean, it was a disappointment for everyone, obviously, but it was like, oh man, we wrote it. It was ready. and yeah, so this year actually being able to, have a lot of questions in the free-for-all. Some, there were some, quite a few new, like fresh ones. Like I think PJ had said on a recent after show that he wanted to not just like do whatever the free for all was going to be in 2020. He wanted to kind of start from scratch, and he had the brilliant idea of bringing the new IG categories in and add those into the doc for the free for all and all that kind of stuff. So, and then it was like, he and I were going through and looking at, all right, well, let's add some questions here and add some questions there. So there were some older questions that I think I'd written, but there was a fair amount of new ones that I got to kind of add. And that's such a thrill. And, that's everybody. I mean, it's not everybody. It's a lot of the greats all at once, answering questions you've written. So that stuff like that is just such a thrill. And it has been, even though some of the mechanics and some of the interactions have changed, it's just been a thrill from the beginning to be a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and one of the things that I feel like has to be rewarding as a question writer, whether it's you or one of your fellow writers that's doing it, is some of the questions that really have an impact are things that will be remembered and things that will be thought of. The fact that this year, like we had not one but two of the XXXX5 scenarios, right? Yeah. And both those questions, with obviously the first one being the Bumblebee, like, well, I'll accredit it to you who actually wrote it. That's for you to care, but I'll accredit it to you. Like, you can say with one question, I wiped Andraco, Collins, Dan, and who was the other one? Oh man, I'm gonna be terrible.
It was Collins, Andraco, Dan, and oh man, it was another champion.
It wasn't Irwin, was it?
Yeah, it was Irwin.
It was Irwin.
Yeah,
okay.
Irwin was still in at that point. Irwin was in for quite a few rounds. Yeah, it was Irwin.
Yeah, and so it's like to get to wipe that many people out and be like, yeah, that question just wiped out 4 champions.
For me, just being a guy on the team who just, is just one of the workaday riders, it's crazy because like I don't have any say over where that question lands. Like, I wrote that question at some point. If I did, like I said, for that one in particular, it's so hard to remember, but it just happened to land there at that moment. And it's crazy. And that has happened a lot. Like there'll be questions that, I put into the round 3 doc that end up being 5-pointers and end up being huge moments. And then even round 2 questions I've written have swung the tide of games and stuff like that. And there'll be times like a player will totally get stumped on a question, and then John Roca or somebody will go on and like Schmoedown backstage and be like, I knew that, and it becomes, and then they're like are rant raving about it and becomes a whole thing. And it's like, wow, I had a part in that whole interaction. It's crazy. And I didn't even know if they were going to use that question. I just put it in there. That's how it landed.
And I feel like that'll even hit especially more, whenever they're able to get back to doing in-person matches, because then you'll get the moments like, and I think it was Ethan Dan, where it was Ethan Roca, the speed round question about Sam Levine's character in Inglourious Bastards, where clearly the entire studio got there with confidence and they're groaning and screaming at them, and like if that's your question,
Sam
that's
rocking
like
up at the table was so amazing. It was so great that he was there that day. But I can. I'm not going to get into too much of like the current matches because I just don't want to step on any toes. Since it's been a couple years, I can go back to one of my favorite moments was when we had started adding new categories, not this year, but the year before. Like one of the categories that we added was Tyler Perry. And it's like, not everybody on the team was scrambling to write Tyler Perry questions. So I'm like, I'll do it. And so I was writing them. And then I happened to be at the live event in LA where it was a title match between which match was that? I think I might be getting them confused, but maybe I wasn't at that live event. I was at the one where Bateman played Oyama, but maybe it was I was watching remotely the one.
Perry was the Dan one. Perry was the Dan one in Atlanta.
Yeah, so Atlanta, so Ben Bateman and Dan number 1. So I guess that was that was in Atlanta. So the Oyama one I saw live, and I did have questions in that match, and then I had questions in the teams match there, and I got to see it all live. So that was awesome. But it was the one I wasn't at, the one in Atlanta where Dan and Ben Bateman played the the betting round question where they got Tyler Perry, and it was what profession was Idris Elba's what does his profession does his character have in Daddy's Little Girls? Like I just written that question like a week earlier, and I'm like, and that swung the entire match. Like, and Bateman, the exuberance and joy when Dan missed it, and he's like, mechanic, and he had asked for a repeat. Like, I think he had been questioning himself because he was like, okay, did he run the mechanic shop, or was he just a mechanic there? Like he was kind of going back in his head a little bit, and then he had the repeat, and then he got it, and it was exactly what I had written in the doc. And it was like, I wasn't there physically, but I was watching live, like on the stream, and it was like, and that was one that I can go back. I can definitely tell you there have been some moments like that in the last few months too. I'm not going to get into the specifics again, but that's one that I can reach back to, and it was like, wow, that was such a big moment in that match. And I think people still talk about, the Tyler Perry speed round thing, it could have easily, swung the match to where Ben won, and it just unfortunately couldn't close at the end of the match, but it really like was a huge, swing. And it is fun to have it's like, I don't want Dan to lose or anything, but to have, be involved in a dramatic moment in a match like that is always going to be kind of amazing.
It's like that. It's that feeling of like, I did that. I'm the reason that happened.
I had no idea they were even going to use that category for a betting round. Like I don't know anything about that. I wrote it for a round 2 question, and they pulled it out, and it was like, oh my god, they're doing that question! Holy crap!
And it's and it's that exact feeling of like, and the good thing is, every time you accidentally hurt somebody with your question, you're also helping someone. So there is that positivity always with it of like, I did that. And it's great, and I do have to say, like, you guys, especially coming into this year, and I want to touch on one more thing before we end it. You guys, again, seriously, have done a really great job of more and more starting to find the balance with the question, and I've even noticed that, like, less and less has there been this, oh, that was a 5-pointer, really? Oh, that was a round 2, really? That is disappearing more and more.
Yeah.
Which is a compliment, like a silent compliment to you guys. The
I think
less
it's
people
always gonna,
bitch,
yeah.
the better you're
I
doing.
think it's always gonna be there, but I do think,
Yeah.
we've there were a lot of, before we started this season, there were a lot of discussions about, let's try to make the questions where there, at least you can guess, come up with an answer. So it isn't like, what's the name of the character in that movie, or what's that specific plot detail in that movie. Like, if you'd have to have seen that movie and be very familiar with it to be able to pull that answer. And that, I just think that's, I agree with the thinking that, from Christian and PJ and different people, that doesn't make for as fun of a show. But if you can
Yeah.
ask, what movie did this thing happen in, or what movie was this character in, like, maybe I'm tipping my hat that maybe I might have been involved with this question, but asking, which Tarantino movie has certain, minor characters in it. It's like Tarantino only has 9 movies, right? So it's like,
Yes.
even if you have no idea, there's the idea that you can get there. But since they are minor
Right.
characters, it is still a pretty challenging question. So I think
Right.
that's a lot of the thinking that has kind of gone into refining it. And I just personally, where the real battle has been round 1, because there was a time when it was just, people would beat big goose eggs in round 1 because the questions were very kind of hard. And then I think, with Skalisky and Christian, everyone, there's this swing back to let's make round 1 really, as easy as possible, and really just kind of, take it easy on them to kind of ease them into
Right.
the match. And I think there were a couple title matches where it's just like, the players were just swinging through these softball questions, and it was like, and I was writing them. I'm like, they want easy questions in round 1, and that was actually a big change for me, coming from the fan leagues where I could do whatever I wanted to. We need to write easy question. We need to write straightforward questions for round 1. And I really got better as a writer, because I had to think differently about how I compose questions and try to make them round 1, as defined by the Schmoedown. But I think, once PJ kind of came in there, he was like, well, let's slip in a curveball. We've got a good base of easy questions. Let's rewrite this one question and just, make it a little tougher for him. Like, instead of it asking Teen Wolf, there's a Teen Wolf question. Why don't we switch it? Teen Wolf 2.
Yeah.
And he's been doing stuff like that. And we've all kind of been, I'll write 10 round 1 questions, and then I'll slip an 11th in there that's a little more, let's see if PJ grabs this one. And then he'll grab it, and I'll be like, oh man, they're really going to do this to these guys. They're going to slip this one in there with the easy ones. And I think that's been something where we've really, made some progress as well. And like you said, it's been bad. You have to start. I think we had to start reset back to an easy round 1, but then it was like, lots of people are getting perfect rounds. It's not as interesting or as dramatic as maybe it could be, because if you get an Adam Collins or a Dan Murrell, they're going to get a perfect round, and there's no real suspense in that. So to slip that one question in there, to slip the last flag flying question at Dan Murray, he's like, God, I don't even remember that, who was in that movie. That I think that makes it a little more interesting. So it's definitely been
absolutely.
In the PJ era, I think we've made some strides to do those kind of things, and it's to be a part of it has just been really, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting to get close to the end here. So I got 3 more questions I'll run by you, and then we'll wrap this one up. So the first question that I had for you is I want to talk to you about the IG expansion. So, and this is a little bit behind the scenes for what I do. Like I said, I help out here or there with the fan league associated with this channel, but the one that I probably have the most direct input on is our Geek League, TM Geek. And I remember having discussions last year about when we start getting a new round of matches going in the new year, and this is something we're still having ongoing discussions about. We never implemented anything, but it's, should we expand the categories? And I remember making suggestions like, why is Transformers in the mixed bag category, it's 7 films. That's its own category. Same with like Turtles, it's 6 films. So when the Schmoedown list got announced, and I was like, oh, so like everything I was saying they're doing, that's validation on my part that they're okay. We're in the same headspace.
Yep, absolutely.
We're in the same headspace. I love what you guys have done, and I especially love the outside the box thinking, because like Planet of the Apes is one, for example. Like, it's not the first one that comes to people's mind, but it's like, no, it's definitely core geek. It's hard sci-fi.
It's
and it's been around longer than Star Wars.
Yeah, it's one of the first like franchises, one of the first like sci-fi geek franchises, you know?
Yeah, and it's always baffled me that it's never been a part of it. And then it's like, no, it really is. And now that we're getting those questions in, I think that's a great addition to it. So if, for what you can say, what was it kind of like, those discussions of like, let's really expand this, let's reinterpret it,
It was really, I mean, I can't say 100%, but I really think that was just PJ coming in and just really feeling like things could change. And I think a lot of those categories came from him. There were some, he would reach out to us, what do you think about this? Or what do you think? Or do you have any ideas? I probably had a little more input with the new singles and teams questions categories. Like, I definitely had some suggestions for that. But, in terms of the I think a lot of it was PJ, but it was really cool to, we added all these new categories, and we need questions. So to be there at the beginning, to be able to, be involved somewhat, because I've never been as involved with the IG. I'll throw in some questions here and there, but that hasn't been my focus as much. But I really got to be more involved once all those new categories were added. So just the fact that they did that, and I think one of the other cool ideas is you just don't want to be the same forever. So the idea of, instead of just being MCU and DC, but actually creating, there's a Spider-Man category, there's a Superman category, all that kind of stuff, I think has been, that was a really cool idea too. And that's something that I don't think really occurred to us as much, like in the fan leagues, that you could split it up that way. So I think that was like an addition that PJ did that I think really goes under the radar. The idea of doing that.
Like when I heard the full list, like at least from my thing, the only thing that I would have changed to his list, and this is just my own personal thought, is I probably still would have kept MCU separate. But when I heard his explanation of like, listen, they could be doing multiverse stuff, we don't really know where it's going. So I understand that reason behind it. I just look at it like point blank, like it's like 23 films. So like that's a lot for its own category. But if that's the biggest nitpick, then that's a damn great job you guys are doing, because even the stuff that didn't offhand, like, oh, Pirates of the Caribbean, yeah, I guess, but all right, or like Zorro, seeing it in matches and seeing, is it going to throw somebody or have they really done their homework? Because that's what IG is, it's like, how ready are they? It's been an interesting kicker. So the second question I have for you before we wrap up, and this is more just a hypothetical as like a writer for yourself. There's always this thing on like the Facebook pages and any of the other social gatherings for Schmoedown fans where people are like, make another Star Wars league. Let's take something else and make it its own league. And while that would be a production nightmare for everyone involved, because you guys already do so much for what is there, as a writer, just for the pure joy of writing, if there was one thing you could spawn off into its own league where you get to only focus on this, what would you want it to be?
Well, I mean, I hate to be the guy adding to this was something that came up last year, and there were a lot of like arguments and people getting heated over it. But I mean, I got to be honest, it's 1000% a horror league. Like the horror is one of my very favorite genres, and it's a genre, but it's also like, it's got its own like fandom, and kind of it's like there are horror geeks in the way that there's a Marvel geeks, there are horror geeks. So I think that for me it would make sense, and it would be the most expansive league there is. Like, you have way more movies and way more subgenres than you do in a Marvel or even like I would say it's about equal to IG as a whole in terms of the amount of movies and the time periods of it and everything. So and it's just, one of my favorite genres, you're right. So just selfishly as a writer, it's the one that I would most love. And one of the moments where I think PJ and I bonded the most as writers is when we were writing the horror free for all. So,
Free for all,
for PJ and I both, like, that is, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, when there were polls going up about should it be its own league or this thing, I think PJ was making the argument for it, and unfortunately it didn't, the nays won out under the ways, the nays outweighed the yays. But yeah, man, I'm always going to be chiming that bell. But there's a lot of other ones like I like the idea of an MCU league. I think that something else besides Star Wars would be cool. I mean, obviously it's a matter of being able to pull it off and the logistics, but I always think more leagues is a good idea.
Yeah, and I do have to say, again, I will credit you guys as somebody who isn't a huge horror fan. So I don't know all like the deep cuts. When I first heard the concept of like a horror free for all, I was just thinking surface level. I'm like, I don't know how much you can get out of that. And then you start hearing the questions and you're like, right, I forgot Friday the 13th has like 14 films in its franchise. You can, and all these franchises are the same way. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 sleepaway camps, for God's sakes. Like, there is really deep places you can go with these. And honestly, once I saw that match, I'm on your side, man. I saw it and I was like, no, I get this. I understand why this could work, especially because, like Adam Collins, who won it, I don't think anybody guessed he'd be that good at horror. And like, what's one more thing for him to dominate? So
exactly.
And
the fact that Bibiani didn't even play, it's like, man, if we launched it as a league, that would be Bibiani's like, that would launch him into it. That would be so cool.
And I think it'll also be interesting because, and like when we talked about our free for all special that we did, where we covered all of the free for alls in one video, one of the things is like the best performers in that match, whether it be like a Seibold or a Mark Hoyt, players who have unfortunately to this point really struggled in the traditional league, that's almost like I'll go to someone we both know, right? I think Robert Parker, if he played in teams or entered singles, could hold himself pretty well in that division. But it is far and away clear that his strength is IG. I think it's a very similar situation with those guys. I think they'll always hold themselves well because even though they've lost, they've never played poorly. But if you put them in a horror division, that's a massacre.
They get to shine. Yeah, exactly. And that's there are people that are great in IG, but they're really great in Star Wars, and it's like there are people who are really great in IG, but are like their real strength is MCU. So just imagine if there's an MCU league. It's like there's always going to be breakdowns that way. Yeah, exactly.
Like I play in our geek league, and like now that I've finally watched all the Lord of the Rings movies and like half the Star Trek films, I don't have 2 open glaring weaknesses. But my far and away strength is MCU because they're obviously like, I think this is the the terminology, but that's like my Star Wars because like just for my age, that's what I've grown up with.
Yeah.
And it's what I know the best. So like I understand it with the Star Wars League. Like those are the people that really grew up with Star Wars, and this is their bread and butter. And so I understand it, and that's why I get the concept for like separate leagues, and hopefully if it ever comes, that'd be brilliant. But hopefully the exhibition matches hold it down. Honestly, I'd love to see another horror free for all. I think that'd be rather entertaining if it's something that could be reasonably pulled off.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a guarantee. There's no way we're not going to do another one. All right.
You will just write a whole match and tell Christian, this is happening, sit back and host. All right. And then one last question before we wrap it up here. I have to throw it out there just because you're here. If I hate myself enough, because I have been playing with the idea, because I have people who are interested. If I hate myself enough to bring back Movie Battleground, what do I have to do to make you hate yourself enough to play one match?
You know what? I will, since I'm coming back to things, I will play one match. I guarantee you. Will I play more?
If it happens.
I don't know, but if you do it, I will come back for a match. That sounds like fun.
All right. Well, if it ever happens, that could just be the biggest tease since, I don't know.
There you go. I don't know how many people know the watch old matches, but if they did, whoever did, that's a little diamond for you guys to hold in your back pocket.
Go back and find that. Yeah. I mean, that could lay out to something, or that could be the worst tease since Monster Hunter teased a sequel in December, because that movie's not getting that. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on, guys.
Absolutely.
That will be the interview. It's been great talking to you, man. Again, and I've said this before, all the people that I've known for a long time, I will always back and support. I got a lot of love for you guys, and you're doing great things in the Schmoedown. Yourself, PJ, Abby, Jose, as a team working together, you guys are doing a great job improving, taking the step, bringing all those new categories in, and really making it even more of a whole product than it was before. I can't congratulate you guys enough, and I look forward to seeing what you guys put out in the future.
Thank you so much. And
yeah,
it's been awesome talking to you again, buddy.
Yeah, for sure, man. So go ahead, take a chance, plug your social media. Where can the good people find you?
Jeremy Paul Adams on Facebook, Jeremy Adams on YouTube. And then, just check out. I've been, a little bit involved here and there at Full Metal Media, so always check them out. And then, of course, check out the Schmoedown. Always, I am there writing. So, there's great things coming. We just had an awesome free for all, and I just was in. I'm not going to give anything away, but I was just involved with writing another exhibition match that I don't think has been announced yet. So I'm really excited for that one to be revealed to the world. And we've got some great title matches and things coming up. I have been able to peek a little bit behind the scenes at some of the teams matches that are going to be airing soon, and know a little bit about what questions and certain things with those matches, and they're going to be amazing. So everybody definitely be dialed in right now.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for checking us out. Please be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, interact with the channel. Stick around for more every single week as I can. I have one of these coming out for you guys. And also be sure to check out all the other stuff that we do on the channel, myself and the aforementioned Mr. Matt Beer, periodically when we can do both trailer reactions and movie reviews. We also have a series of other podcast shows on the channel. Every Monday, like it is at 7 p.m. EST, SchmoeTalks goes up. Every Tuesday afternoon, we have Cancel This Show, in which two of our members, Alan Shepard and Matt Beard, decide politics is a good thing to talk about for an hour. So if that finds entertaining to you, check that out. Every Saturday night at 9 p.m. EST, we have After Dark. That's our kind of sit back, hangout show. We talk about all the latest in the week in movie news. And then every Sunday at noon EST, we have the Supernova Show, which is hosted by Colton Roberts. All your geekiest pleasures and desires, including the Schmoedown, are discussed in one place. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next week on SchmoeTalks. Ignore the Falcon and the Winter Soldier logo in the outro. That's outdated.